So this weekend at the Copper Box, Adam Azim is facing Ohara Davies. What are my thoughts on this fight? Well, I'm actually really excited for this fight. I think for Adam Azim, the up and coming prospect, honestly, I think it's like the perfect sort of level up fight that you can get. I think Jack Catterall probably a step too far right now. Josh Taylor, maybe a little bit step too far. It's hard to tell with these prospects sometimes if they're like the real deal or if they've been overhyped. But I do think Adam Azim is showing signs that he is definitely the real deal. You look at, the up and coming heavyweight Johnny Fisher, you have to wonder, where the promoters and the people around him think his ceiling is because, he's being faced off against Dave Allen in Saudi, whereas another up and coming prospect, Moses Talma, is being faced off against Dempsey McKean, who's been 12 rounds of Hergovich. So you think, looking at those two heavyweights, they think Talma probably has the highest ceiling. And the fact that Azim is going in here against Ohara Davies, who has been to world level but fallen short, shows that it's looking like he is a real, up and coming prospect with a high ceiling. So the main things I think about after watching Azim's previous fights is he's really fast, right? I guess a lot of the guys at the smaller weights are fast, but he seems very fast. And I was really impressed with his boxing IQ. He picks his shots really well. He works the body well. And to say he's like 22 and he's 11-0, I've been impressed with how mature some of his performances have been. Against Petit Jean, he dropped him in the fifth with a body shot. And instead of going crazy and trying to get him out there, he boxed really nicely. He exerted his energy really well, didn't overdo it to begin with. He just outboxed him for another 5 rounds, and eventually he dropped him with another body shot in the 10th, and the referee ruled it off. I think it was Poulsen was on his knees. I think he was on 6, and the ref just waved it off. So maybe he would have got up, but probably wouldn't have. So I've definitely been impressed by Adam Azim, and I think Ohara Davies is actually going to be a really good matchup for him because whereas Azim, he's fast, he's a little bit he looks a little bit smaller at the weight. Maybe he doesn't quite have the punching power of Ohara Davies, but then you look at Ohara Davies, he's powerful, but he's definitely slower. He's got quite a big upper body as well, so I think, just holding more weight just slow down a little bit. Whereas Azim, as I said, he's quite slim, very fast. So it'll be interesting to see how these two line up, because I actually remember from watching the Amir Khan versus Kell Brook talk leading up to the fight. Kell Brook was certain he would win because he always thought that timing beats speed. So if someone's really fast, it's not always a problem because you can time them. So I think this will be interesting for Adam Azim to see how he deals with a power puncher. He'll have the speed, he'll probably have the work rate, he's probably got a better punch output, but will he have the timing to be able to avoid Ohara's power punches? Ohara's only got to land once to knock Azim down or get him out of there. Whereas, Adam's got to be good for 12 rounds to win the fight. So I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup. It is sort of the boxer versus the puncher. I mean, obviously, Ohara Davies can box as well. You don't get to, world title fights without being able to box. Ohara Davies, he's fallen short at the world level. He's lost to Catterall, Taylor, and he lost the sort of shocking 1-round KO to Barrioso, who was about 40. His last fight. So that was quite shocking. And yeah, Ohara Davies hasn't had much of an amateur background. I think he only had 18 fights. He said that his style was just a lot better suited for the pro game, so he moved over to the pro game. Whereas Azim, he has a very impressive amateur record. 10 national titles, 1 European championship, European silver medal. He won every national title. He was the #1 youth amateur welterweight at a time as well. So I was thinking for a guy that turned over to the pro game so early, he turned over on his 18th birthday. I was like, has he done everything amateurs? But it looks like he's got a pretty complete amateur record as well, Azim. So as I said, Azim definitely looking like the real deal. As I said, he was 11-0. I think his first sort of 6 or 7 wins were all 1 round, 2 rounds. He got the guys out of there, but he did step up his competition and he did start going 10 rounds with people, which is great experience at such a young age. And I think turning pro so young, I think it'll give him an advantage because when he's facing other guys that haven't been pro as long, you think if you've been going 10 rounds at, 19, 20, you've still got, I don't know, 10, 14 years ahead of you in your career. That's a great advantage to have over your opponents. So he fought a guy called Reyes who was 12-0 and he dropped him and then got the decision win. He went 12 rounds with Fayan, who was 23-1. Again, a pretty decent record. And that guy looked pretty big. Similar to Ohara Davies, he had a pretty massive upper body. And then Petit Jean, probably, in my opinion, his best performance yet. He went 10 rounds, dropped him in the 5th, dropped him in the 10th, and he didn't get up. I was really impressed with that performance. And then his most recent win was Poulsen, where he won every round, but then, well, he won by KO, but I think it was because Poulsen injured his shoulder. But still, he won every round. So I think this is the perfect step up at the right moment and the perfect time to do it. I think it's the perfect step up, a guy who's been world level, but not quite there. Maybe slightly on the slide. As I said, he did get that 1 round KO loss to Barrioso. He was about 40. But to be fair, that guy's quite good. He was beating Roy Romero, but then he got that very dodgy stoppage, which sort of screamed of corruption. But, not to talk Ohara Davies down too much, because he's definitely got real power. Like, his best run is probably Lewis Ritson, who's been in there with guys like Robbie Davis Jr. And that was a pretty devastating KO. Again, it was to the body, and he was rolling around on 10, Lewis Ritson. Like, he was not getting up from that. I think Lewis Ritson was a bit of weight drain, but it was a very impressive stoppage. And, with Azim, the guy took a knee, whereas with Davis, Ritson was rolling around on the floor like he was done. So I think on a mental perspective as well, it'll be interesting for Azim to almost deal with the fear or the possibility of being knocked out. How is he going to overcome that fear in his mind? He probably hasn't had that so far with his, previous competitors. He probably thought he could beat them all. But when you've seen a guy who has got a good knockout reel, how is he going to be able to fight off the demons? What if you turn off for, 10 seconds and you eat a big punch from him? How is he going to overcome those mental demons? Is he going to stay turned on enough in the fight to avoid those moments? Because obviously that's the thing with boxing, right? You switch off for 10 seconds and you can be done, Ohara Davies will tell you that against Barrioso. Fraser Clark will tell you that against Fabio Wardley. I think for Azim, and I think Shane McGuigan will help him here, because I think Shane McGuigan will have a good game plan, because obviously he was just with Chris Bimler-Smith, who beat Riagpur. He was a big puncher. I think the main thing he's got to do is you've got to move, and you've got to have a lot of head movement. Don't allow your opponent to plant their feet to be able to get those big shots off. It was sort of what Ryan Garcia did against Oscar Duarte. You just want to keep moving. So I think Azim can definitely beat Ohara Davies. I think he can move him, and I think he could potentially stop him just by output, exhausting Davies, working his body well. Can definitely stop him, but it would be interesting to see if he will be able to stay turned on for 12 rounds. So yeah, I think it'll be a pretty fascinating fight. For my prediction, I do think Azim looks like the real deal. I do think he'll have too much. I think he'll get him out of there around 9 or 10. I think it might be by a body shot. I don't know if Azim has the power to sort of hit someone on the chin and knock him out, but I think a bit like Usyk, with just pure output, pure exhaustion, working the body well, I think I'll be able to stop Ohara Davies in the latest rounds. But again, to give Ohara Davies credit, big puncher. He talks a good game as well. He's been talking the fight up well in the press conferences, and obviously he was in the news because he got really annoyed at all of the boxing journalists who didn't check in on him after his loss to Barrioso. I think that's quite an interesting insight, isn't it? If you're trying to get into this boxing game as a journalist or whatever, if you want to, get the first inside scoop with a fighter or get like the preview, these guys are human. Check up on them. The boxing game's very cruel, isn't it? No one cares about you after a loss. Everyone only cares about the winner. But if you're that one guy who is going to check up on the loser, you're going to stand yourself in great stead if the fighter has a comeback. So yeah, I think it's a great fight. I think it's a perfect time for both guys to take this fight. Both guys have a lot on the line. Even though obviously Ohara Davies did get stopped in the first round recently, I would say his best win was against Ritson, which was only, I think it was March of 2023. So that wasn't that long ago, really, when you would say his prime was or his best win. He's 32, so he's not over the hill just yet. So I think it's the perfect fight at the perfect time. I think stylistically it will be interesting. It will be the boxer, the smaller guy, the faster guy, probably with the higher output against a slower but the more powerful guy. So yeah, I'm really excited for the fight. And on the undercard, it's a pretty decent undercard as well. Anthony Yarde is back against, it's a comeback fight, but the guy has a decent record. I think it's 17-1, Valcarez or something, I think his name is. And then Dan Aziz is back against Edmondson, I think. I mean, Dan Aziz, his loss against Buatsi has aged quite well, because obviously Buatsi's gone on to beat Hutchinson and is probably next in line for a shot at Bivol or Beterbiev, depending if they do a rematch or not. If not, maybe the winner of David Morrell and Benavides. So yeah, pretty decent undercard as well. A few names on there. It'll be interesting to see how Dan Aziz does. You wonder if Dan Aziz wins and Yarde wins. That could be next. Or I guess the bigger fight is probably Yarde versus Buatsi, but maybe Buatsi is going to hold out to see what happens with Bivol versus Beterbiev. I'm not sure if I want to see a rematch for that fight. I just think it will be a repeat. Like, I think the fight will be very similar. I can't see either fighter changing much. Like, I think both fighters were pretty much at the top of their game when they fought each other. So I think I'd like to see Beterbiev go up to cruiserweight. He's quite a big guy anyway, so we'll test to see what he's like at cruiserweight. And then Bivol, you've got Yard, you've got Boazzi, you've got the winner of Morel Benavides. So yeah, that's what I would like to see for those guys in the future. But yeah, leave me your prediction in the comments down below. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It really helps. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.